Hey y'all, it's your girl Veronica and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about 10 secret tips and tricks to help you pass the PMP on the very first try. If you're new here, my name is Veronica and this is PM Mastermind, where we help you pivot into project management or level up in your project management career. So before we get started, make sure you subscribe to my channel, turn on that notification button, and without any further ado, let's get started. All right, so you are likely preparing for the PMP exam and you're probably nervous. And one of the favorite things that I encounter with people is that they always come and ask me, hey, I know I can, read the PMBOK and read the Agile guide and study, but can you tell me what the shortcuts are to pass the PMP? And it makes me chuckle a little bit because on one hand, there are no shortcuts, but on the other hand, there are some tips and tricks that you can leverage to help increase your likelihood of being successful on the very first try. So the goal today is to give you 10 secret tips and tricks to help you pass that PMP above target in all three areas. The first tip that I would give somebody who's preparing to take the PMP is to understand that PMI is not just testing your knowledge of project management. They are testing your knowledge of PMI's project management language. This is extremely important because project management in and of itself is a language. You need to understand what a scope is, what a stakeholder is, how a risk is defined, how do they define an issue, right? What is agile? What is adaptive? What is iterative versus incremental? If you have a very clear understanding of the language of PMI and project management, then you're going to be able to sift through what is important in a question on the PMP and what is just fluff. Now, the reason why this is such an important aspect of the exam is because when you are studying for the PMP, you'll probably start to notice that the information is not complex, but it is very dense. There's a lot of it. So it's easy for them to throw different random terms and fluff into a question to throw you off. You need to be extremely clear in understanding PMI's language that they use, because if you are, you're going to be able to sift through questions with no problem. Tip number 2 is focused around your time management. Now, you only have a certain amount of time to take the PMP exam. And a lot of the time where people mess up is that they go in, they don't manage their time well, they're slow on section 1 and 2, and when it comes to the third section, they run out of time, and now there's all these unanswered questions that they didn't get to even try on. You need to manage your time. Some people like to use the 60-70-60 rule, which means take 60 minutes on the first section, 70 minutes on the second section, and 60 minutes on the last section. This will help you kind of stay on track with how much time you're using. You need to be paying attention to the timer. There is one provided on the exam, and you can say, okay, if I'm spending more than 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes on each question, I'm completely going outside of the realm of possibility here, right? If you can't solve a question in a certain amount of time, flag it, move on, and if you have extra time at the end, come back. But you shouldn't be spending 5-10 minutes on a question. That's not going to help you at all. If you don't know it in the first 1.5 to 2 minutes, you don't know it right now. Move on and make sure that you're performing as well as you can on the questions that you do know. And speaking of flagging, that's going to bring us to tip number 3. Use the flagging feature. Okay, a lot of the times I'll hear people say, well, I'll just guess if I don't know it and then I'll go on and, not a big deal. It is a big deal. There's a flagging feature for a reason. If you don't know it when you first see it, flag it, move on, and then that way, if you have extra time, you know exactly where you can go to review that question. And sometimes what you'll see is that other questions on the exam give you the answer to previous questions that you saw. Okay, that's not common knowledge, but it happens a lot. So you want to use the flagging feature if you run into anything where you're like, I'm not 100% sure on what this is or what it's asking. Go ahead and move on. Come back to the question that you flagged. Now, where people mess up is when they overuse the flagging feature. Do not flag every single question, okay? You only need to flag the ones that you know for sure you cannot answer right now. If you flag every single question for review, you're just going to mess yourself up as you move forward in the exam, and even more when you go back and try to review all of those questions. So stick to flagging only the ones that you know for a fact you cannot answer right now with any level of confidence. And then if you have extra time in the end, go back, review them, and try to determine what the most appropriate answer is. Girl, I'm in here sweating. Okay. Tip number 4 is going to be beware of distractors. Now, PMI will do this thing, well, they will provide you different answer options, and some of them are really close, but they're slightly off, right? Maybe one word is incorrect, or it's not quite defined the way that they have it in the answer category. You need to be aware of these things because they do this intentionally to see if you really know your stuff. In our community, I post practice questions every single day. And I got a comment from one of our community members that said, I've never even heard of some of these answer options. And I responded and said, that's because they don't exist. PMI does this all the time where they'll give you an option that sounds really close, but it's not quite there. Okay, those are simply there to distract you. So be aware of these things and make sure that you're not getting caught up in the distractions. If you've never heard of it, there's a possibility that that's because it's not actually a thing. Tip number 5 is going to be use the PMI mindset, okay, or the PM mindset, if you will. You need to be asking yourself the question, what would PMI do? Because that's a big part of what this test is about. They're testing you on what would they do. They oversee the credential. They're the ones who provide you all of your study and training material. So this isn't really a question about what you would do in the situation, but more what you think PMI would do in the situation. If you read each question through that frame of mind, then you're much more likely to pick the right answer. Tip number 6 is going to be avoid hero answers, okay? A lot of the time, PMI will give you these what would you do questions, and one of the answers is very heroic in nature. The project manager goes out and does this and does this and does this, but it's not quite according to the book. I can tell you right now that PMI does not reward heroics, right? They're much more into process. So make sure that you understand what the appropriate process is to follow, and that's always going to be the right answer. They're not out here looking for heroes. Tip number 7 would be avoid common traps such as definitive wording. Okay, whenever you're seeing answer options that say always, never, that's likely not going to be the right answer. The definitive nature of these answers is what throws you off because there's rarely ever a black and white situation. There's typically a lot of gray area. So if you see these common definitive words like always or never in an answer option, it's probably not the right answer. Tip number 8 is that you don't want to invest a lot of your study time into memorizing every single ITTO. You really would rather spend your time focusing on understanding how the different process groups flow into each other. A lot of the questions that you will get are focused on what to do first, second, third, or fourth. And the reason that they ask you these questions is because they want to know if you understand what step you're on, what steps have already been taken, and what steps should be taken next. And you don't really get that from just memorizing all the ITTOs. You need to understand how these different process groups connect to one another and flow into each other. Tip number 9, use practice questions. Use practice questions. But there are levels to this, right? I see people going and finding free practice exams online, and when they bring them back to me and we look at the practice questions together, each question is only one sentence. This is not realistic. The questions on your PMP exam are long. They are long. I would say 90% of them are in paragraph format. So if you are taking practice exams and each question is only one sentence long, you are not setting yourself up for success. You need to find those long form behavioral, what would the project manager do type questions, because that's the format that PMI uses on the PMP exam. And tip number 10 is an oldie but goodie. You need to be confident. You need to trust your first mind. I can't even tell you how many clients and students that I've worked with where they'll tell me what they thought first and then they went with their second answer and the first answer was right. You need to trust yourself. Trust your studying, trust the work that you've put in, trust your consistency, right? You have been learning this over whatever period of time, and you need to have a certain level of self-belief and confidence if you're going to be successful on this exam. It's long, it's tiring, it's mentally draining, and you're probably nervous while you're taking it, right? You're like, I don't want to take this again. I don't want to spend the money again. I don't want to have this experience again. You have to release all of those negative thoughts and really lean into your confidence and your self-belief if you're going to be successful, okay? Go with your first mind. If you need to flag it, but don't start doubting your answer and then switch over to something else because your first thought is probably the right one. So that was 10 secret or not so secret tips and tricks to help you pass the PMP exam on the very first try. If you are trying to test for the PMP or become a project manager, maybe even level up in your project management career, you should consider joining our community on School. We are the only school community that focuses on helping people who don't have project management experience become project managers. The link is in the description, so be sure to check it out. And if you found this video informative and helpful, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and be sure to hit that notification bell. So until next time, this is your girl Veronica signing off, and I'll see you guys later.